what's up, guys? I'm sitting here with my good friend and my pastor, Barry Park. Barry's a pastor at University Christian Church in Manhattan. He also runs Bibles and Barbells for us at our Manhattan gym. We've been friends a long time. Ironically, we're actually from the same hometown, McPherson, Kansas.
Yep.
But I did not know that right out the gate until actually I was in my 30s and attending University Christian Church, and I saw a slide with you in a McPherson high school football uniform. And the reason that's kind of ironic is because McPherson's not a big town, 14,000 people.
Yeah.
But so Barry's been one of my most trusted friends and definitely one of my advisors. When it comes down to something where I'm trying to decide if this is a good move or not, if I don't feel like comfortable taking it to Barry, I know it's probably not a good idea. But yeah, so we've been friends for a long time. And May 1st of 2016, I got baptized as an adult. You know, I was baptized as a baby, but I got baptized as a man in May, and Barry did that. It was a kind of a private ceremony, and I think we got a picture of that.
Yeah. Let's
show it because I was really jacked at that time, so I'm really another good reason to show it. But yeah, I mean, I really on this podcast, I want you guys to understand who Barry Park is, who he is to me, and who he is to the gyms. And it's been a big impact, especially with Bibles and Barbells. I mean, I could talk all day about the relationship that we have, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But it's good to have people in your corner that are going to speak positivity into you and give you honest and good advice so you stay on the right track. Because your circle that you surround yourself with, as everybody knows, it's critical to your success.
It defines you, and if you don't watch that, and people are speaking into you more than you ever realize, and so surrounding yourself, and you gotta be open. You gotta help those who are struggling, but those who speak into you, that's a whole nother story. Mm-hmm. And so that you gotta think: are they going to be building me up? Are they strengthening me? You know, there's that. That was a good day. That was the 6th. That's where we signed off on it, and I even think they got the video of it as well. If we can pull that up.
The video of the baptism?
Yeah, didn't you have the video on there too?
I had it, but I couldn't find it.
Well, we don't get to share that.
No, I know
that was because that's a good thing when you're all that jacked, and I'm like, see, I can pick up this dude. He's heavy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, God, it's been what are we going on? Almost 8 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was good.
Yeah, and it definitely changed my life. I mean, I was at that point in time for me, I was picking and choosing. I always felt like I was a good person. But I was picking and choosing what I would let God run in my life. And there was a lot of things, relationships, even some professional things and things that I was pursuing like bodybuilding that I was excluding God from. And at this point in my life, I got to the point where I was probably one of the lowest points before this. And I realized like what I'm doing wasn't working. And I finally fully submitted. Yes. And not to say that my life is perfect, but it's so much better.
Well, it's not about perfection. It's about who you're really submitted to. We have countless people around the world who are believers. But there's a big difference between being a believer and a follower. And that's kind of like, knowing about lifting weights versus lifting weights, versus even knowing what you're really doing and submitting to your diet and figuring out how to make it healthy, watching all that stuff. And that's the thing that I saw that was so cool in your life. You believed and you had a genuine belief. But it really became a part of your life at that moment. That's when I saw you where I would say, oh, Matt's a follower now. And of course you had your ups and downs, just like I do.
Sure.
But that's the difference, I think, that I so love to see that happen in someone's heart and life.
Yeah, I mean, definitely life-changing for me. And honestly, my life has been such a more of a success in all elements relationally, but business as well. I'm really into business. That's one of my passions. And it's one thing I'd like to touch with you on too is how being financially successful can get demonized. And at the same time, I think you and I share the same opinion that it's not the devil until it becomes your idol.
Yeah.
Right? Because the world needs people to make money to do good things with it.
Yeah. The thing is, people think, well, isn't money the root of all evil? Isn't there a verse? No, it's the love of money is the root. That's the problem. I mean, if it becomes your idol, if it becomes your number one, Yeah, that's a big problem. But God uses some of the most incredible people I've known over the years are businessmen or businesswomen who have submitted their lives to him, who said, hey, I'm all in. And then they use that for his glory. And yes, they enjoy life. Yes, they have a good time at the same, but it's not all about them.
Right.
And, because there are just so many missionaries around the world. There are so many ministry things that it's because people sacrificially give and get behind that. And especially those who have the capability, hey, God's going to bless that. When you're using it for his glory, now it doesn't work in a manipulative sense. You can't say, God, if you make me filthy rich, I'm going to, no, he's not going to be manipulated. But when you're submitted to him, I've seen his blessing come upon that often.
Sure. And I don't want to focus on the finances too much. However, this podcast is about faith, your fitness, your family, your fellowship, and finances. Yeah. So that kind of falls in line with it. One thing about that, though, when it comes to tithing, that's one time in the Bible where Jesus says, test me.
Yeah.
Right?
And in one place. It's in the Old Testament, actually, and it's in Malachi. And he's like, all right, you guys have been robbing me. God uses that word first. And they're like, how have we been robbing you? He says, you're not bringing the tithe into the storehouse. You're not doing it. And then Jesus affirms it in the New Testament, saying, yes, you should be tithing, as he's correcting the leaders on something, and then goes on and teaches them something. But yeah, test me. And he says, see if I won't throw open the floodgates. In Malachi 3, he says, just see if I won't throw open the floodgates and bless you, when you're faithful in this area. And that's something my dad taught me as a little kid. The first time, Matt, that I gave, I had a paper out, and I went and delivered papers. I got my first paycheck. It was $50. And I thought, yes, I'm rich. And Dad's like, hey, well, we've talked about tithing before, so how much is a tithe of that, Barry? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I didn't want to talk math. I'm like, no, I don't want to give that up, because I knew where he was going. But he taught me to give, and I want to be a giver. It's not just about giving money. It's about really giving of your life. And that's something I've seen that's happened in your life. I mean, even from the gym when it started, because when you opened up that gym in Manhattan first as the first location, I was working out of my garage. I was doing that just stuff at home, and you're like, Barry, you got to come out and check out my gym. You got to check out my gym, and I'm like, okay, I'll check out the gym, and I was like, and then I just fell in love with it because it became a community, and it became a family, and out of that. A lot of ministry started to happen. And then from the ministry that was happening already, that's when you were like, hey, we need to do a Bible study. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, absolutely. And so it's been neat. Now it's spreading in your other locations too.
Yeah. So we just started our third Bibles and Barbells.
That's awesome.
Up here in Olathe, the gym we're in now, which was the podcast room is in. And it was a huge success, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest turnout that we've had on day one. Yeah. So it's exciting. That's something that's going to be a staple in the gyms moving forward. If you guys have been in our gyms, you've seen the strength logo with the two crosses. That's never going to change. That's our way of saying, hey, this is a faith-based business. You can come to us with these questions, but we're not chasing you around, hitting you over the head with the Bible. Oh, no, you know what I mean? No. So another thing about Barry, you can tell he's not your typical pastor, not built quite like the typical pastor. He's been in the gym for years. He actually was best friends with Glenn Pendelay. If you guys are in the powerlifting world, rest in peace, Glenn Pendelay. But he was a big figure in that sport. Yeah. And Barry and Glenn started the first KSU powerlifting team, correct?
Yeah. It was right on Kansas State University. We had our first one. He and I organized, did that, and he got me into it for a while, and then he just exploded and got huge and kept going with it. But it was so fun. We went and competed, and I got to see him do it, and it was. I miss Glenn. He was a good friend. Went through a lot of hard stuff in life, but one of the the cool things there is we started that there, and when it comes to faith. Glenn was my goodness, 20-plus year project where we were like best friends, and he lived with me my senior year. So not just like a buddy that we'd go hang out every once in a while, and he lived in our house. He was like one of the kids in our family because he had just been through a lot and at home and a lot of problems. And
that's high school, senior
That was
year.
in high school. And so we were friends for years, but he had been through so much hurt. He was just absolutely kind of he really had a hard time laying it down for God. And but before he passed, he came to that point where he said, man, I'm all in. and he let go of the hurt in his life. And I was there. I got when he came back from Russia and won the Junior Worlds powerlifting, and then I got to see him, coach some of the best Olympic lifters around the nation. But at the end of life, when his health failed, and he was young, he was in his 40s when it happened. I was just so thankful above every accomplishment that he had, and of all the stuff that he did. He built up his own company and coached. But the best thing that ever happened is when he actually said, okay, I'm all in. And as he prayed to give his life to Christ and said it was so good to see some of the hurt and bitterness that he had fought with his whole life. You didn't get around Glenn much and not know. He was a tough son of a gun. But in the final days of his life, there's a whole new tenderness, and it's a beautiful thing. He was always a mountain of man strong, but he finally became strong on the inside too.
Nice. Well, and good for you for leading that. You know what I mean? Because from the sound of things, it probably wouldn't have been that way if it wasn't for your influence.
Yeah, it was a long. Sometimes people get tired of trying to witness to a friend or trying to share the hope that they have. Mm-hmm. And what I encourage is don't focus on just one, but don't give up on the one.
Okay.
You got to continue to give it to whoever you come near, because God's going to bring different people along your path, but some people never leave your path. And so I didn't focus on Glenn only. I've focused on thousands of people over the years, just coming in and out of the church and in the gym, hundreds of people there that I've shared with, and you just kind of see what God opens up, and then you run with it if he does. But Glenn's a guy that it was every few years, all of a sudden I'd get a call in the middle of the night, and because I just stayed in touch. And all of a sudden we'd be praying, we'd be talking, he'd be opening up, and he'd be processing something. And it was because we stayed in touch, and I never gave up on him. A lot of people gave up on him because he's a good man. I loved him. He's a good friend, but he was hard to love because hurt people. And that's just a truth that happens. And so you didn't have to be around him long before you're like, hey, come. He's really ticking me off. and he was enough of a friend of mine, I'd just say, shut up. And I'm like, quit that. And, but because I just never quit, I was always a safe place for him. And then finally, God became his God, not just a God. And that changed everything.
Nice. Yeah, and we were just talking about this in the last Bibles and Barbells, but I think about this a lot, the last thing that Jesus said before he ascended for the second time was, make disciples of all nations.
Yes.
Right? So if that's the last thing that we were told to do, that really sticks with me.
Yeah.
It's actually part of my prayer every day, my morning devotional. Yeah. So I feel like a duty to try and bring people to Christ. And for me, it's like, if I care about you, what kind of person am I if I don't at least try? I mean, it's your eternity, right?
Absolutely.
It's like if you're going a road trip, there's another vehicle behind you with your buddies, and you're driving ahead, and the bridge is out, and you don't tell them.
Yeah.
Like,
you have to almost hate somebody to do that.
Right.
That's the crazy thing. Absolutely.
Right.
And so for me, there are times, when I came back into working out in the gym, because I'd been out for quite a while, and I worked out, I was still active, but I needed some space, and so I stopped going because the gym there were some issues going on. I didn't want to be around it.
Sure.
And but you were on a different kind of gym, and
right.
You really try and keep integrity. And so I'm like, okay, it's Matt's gym. I'll go down. And I wasn't real excited about it. I was excited for you, but I wasn't excited about being in the gym culture because it can be just kind of more of a meat market.
Right.
And yet that's not how things run. Not in your gyms. You work really hard to keep integrity. And I realized that I was actually hiding a part of my life. And I hadn't realized that. That was an area that I'm like, no, this is my time. And it really wasn't a God time. And it was when I started coming down there, I realized how much of this is an opportunity to get me around people who aren't going to walk through the doors of my church.
Right.
They'll talk to me down here, because when it comes down to it, I might be as big or strong as some of these guys, and they're like, dude, what's that old dude? And I'm like, I still get after it. I love heavyweights, but that gives me an open door than to go ahead and talk with them about other stuff and about having strength from an inside, not just an outside. But I tell you, being down there, and you've called me about guys when they're struggling with addiction. You've shared with me when people are struggling in marriages or relationships. And several of them are ones that you've worked with and then said, hey, you got to talk to my pastor as well. And we've kind of tag teamed on. But that's where the Bible and Barbells came from as well. I'm like, okay, I need to open up a door because I'll talk to them. And then I'd say, hey, you know what? I'm a pastor. I'd love to have you come to church. And you can kind of see the wall come. They're like, oh, I don't want to go to church. But when I meet somebody and I'm like, dude, we do a Bible study just for anybody. It's called Bible and Barbells, just right here in the gym. And they're like, oh. You know, and I'll invite a few times, and a lot of times they'll say, hey, I'll check it out. I have people who come in because just the posts that you guys put up, or they see a poster around the gym, and they're like, yeah, I'll come check this out. And out of that, man, I've talked with soldiers who are threatening suicide and fighting. I've worked with people on the edge of divorce, and we've baptized several individuals where they say, man, I want to be in. And baptism, for if you're not around it much, all that means is just I'm going all in for Jesus. And so, like, when you got baptized as an adult, it wasn't just a little bit of you. It was all the muscle and all of his head and everything down under that water saying, I'm going all in. And so that's the picture of saying I'm submitting. I want all of me to be yours. And so I've had several people that have done that right out of. And, you know, we got people from numerous churches. And I was so thankful when you started up the first one in Kansas City. I'm like, hey, the word disciples making disciples,
right?
Which is what we're called to do.
Right.
It's not just me. It's, you know, you've got a fire, and then you helped start one up here, and then you had the vision to start now another one. And man, when you sent me the video of that first opening night just a few weeks ago of this one, I was like about ready to start crying. I was like so happy by that.
Yeah, it's really cool because, I mean, the one thing about our Bibles and Barbells is these guys are already in the gym, so it's they feel safe in that space. Mm-hmm. And then they see guys like us, and they think, oh, because I have guys come to me occasionally like, how do you do what you do? What's the edge? And there's a lot of edges, but at the core of it is my faith.
Yes.
And so they think, well, man, if a guy like that is willing to pursue his faith, I could consider it. And the fact that they don't have to walk straight into a church, they can walk into Bibles and Barbells, and it's like-minded individuals, whether they want to talk the first time or not. It's fine. Whether either they're members or not, it's open to everybody.
That's right.
And it's been. It's honestly,
I razz them when they go to another gym, and I'm like, "You're going to that trader gym. That's not a good. This is a good." but they can still come.
Yeah.
But I try and convert every one of them to Jesus and the foundation.
They may hear about it. They may hear about it a little bit. But as you guys have heard, Barry is also a gym guy. So, and I think we actually have some footage of you bench pressing. He has a unique style of bench press, and it took me a while to be okay with it, but it's been working out. So
I bench on a ball, and it just because it conforms to my shoulders and it kind of protects them most of the time. But I love to get heavy, and I'm getting old, so I need to kind of start ratcheting back. But so here was just last summer. It was on my birthday. I wasn't prepared for heavy weights at all. I'd been doing high reps, but I was like, it's my birthday. I just want to go see if I can throw something around. And
how much weight is this?
This is 345. I was going to do a double and then going up and try and get my max, which was 365. But I did the first one, and it went up pretty good. And I decided I'm putting it back. And I just went ahead and put it back. I'm like,
honestly, Bosu Ball is going to hit us up and use this as an advertisement. I mean, that's a lot of weight to put on that ball, but it never pops on you. So
no, I've never. Now, because I know more than one of your guys have been worried about the ball, I've started putting
this one.
the platforms underneath the weights,
the arms,
the
safeties,
the ones that you can do all the step ups on. Those wood platforms with the rubber tops.
Yeah, the plyo boxes.
Yeah, so I'll put those plyo boxes under each side to where if it popped, all I do is fall to the ground and it would just drop a few inches.
Good.
So I'm being, so be safe if you ever try to do this.
Yeah.
Put something under so the ball can't go to the ground and smash you.
And equally important, make sure you sign the liability waiver if you're in that gym. But let's talk a little bit more about Bibles and Barbells and the impact that it's had in bringing people to Christ and baptisms and whatnot, because you've had a handful of people over the years that have came to Christ that normally probably wouldn't have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of one guy that's probably going to actually be up here in this location and not long. We've been talking about. He's a military guy, and he came into the group. It's about as rough as you could. I mean, he had to keep saying, "Oh, sorry about that. Oh, sorry about that," because he was just letting words fly all the time. And then he'd say things, and I'm like, "Oh my word!" And I love him. He's become like an adopted son to me in many ways. And he doesn't have much family, and so he calls me Pops, and it's kind of funny. But when he first came in, I remember going, "Oh, God, I know I said I'd minister to anybody, but really?" And I've told him this, so if he watches, he'll be laughing because he was just messy. And but 2 years of working with him, I saw this guy who had so little hope. He straight up told everybody, he said, "I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I this," and he just list everything that you could imagine. And PTSD to the max, couldn't sleep at night, and a lot of hurt. He'd just seen a lot of bad stuff, and he knew of God. He was once again, it was the believer versus follower, but he was a believer. Oh yeah, I believe in God. So what? The demons believe.
Sure.
I mean, demons know, ain't that? So believing doesn't do anything. It's about submitting your life and becoming a follower. And so he just started coming. He started sharing, and I think he thought I was going to like kick him out at the beginning because he was so messy. And I've wondered. I thought about asking him. I haven't asked him. I need to ask him. But were you pushing my buttons on purpose at the beginning just to see if I'd kick you out? But over a couple of years, he gave his life to Christ, and I got to baptize him. It was this last Easter. And then the cool thing is not only did I get to baptize him, you fast forward only about 4 months, and another young man who came in that was messy, and the first night I always ask a question, all right, what's your God moment? And it doesn't matter whether you're a follower of Christ or not. I just say, what I'm saying is what's something that you can be thankful for? Because God's always at work. And we see the crap of life. We see all the bad of life. We don't see the good because we're not trained to. And you actually have neural pathways in your brain. The more negative that you have, the more negative that you're going to see. And if you don't train those neural pathways towards positive, that's where depression, that's where anxiety, that's where all that comes in. You got to train your brain to go positive. So I just force them and say, okay, what's one good thing? We're not going to talk about what's bad. I know everybody in this room can tell you what's bad. We'll have a talk on that later. What's one good thing this last week that you're just thankful to God for? And I've had guys say, well, I don't believe in God, but here's something I'm thankful for. I'm like, that's so good. I'm glad you're here. But it was so cool that this other young man, he came in, he said, I think my parents took me to church maybe when I was a little kid. This is like the first organized thing that I've ever been to in my life. And he was messy. And it was about 4 months later of then this guy pouring in to this next guy that he ended up baptizing him out the reservoir right outside of Manhattan. And I was so proud because now it's me discipling him discipling another, and then now that guy is bringing people and he's working on people. That's the way the kingdom of God is supposed to be. It's not you just have to go to the church and find the preacher. It's working on one person after the next, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, I just love that. We have people from several churches, all kinds of backgrounds. I've had people come through that say, I don't know what I believe, but I know this guy who comes and invited me, whoever one of the guys might be, there's something different. So I'm here.
Right on.
And then that's where I hope people see something different. I know they do in you.
Well, I hope so as well. One thing that was really cool about this recent launch of the newest Bibles and Barbells is for the first time, I was a spectator. We have a young youth pastor, member of the gym, just talked to our staff, knew we were going to start it, so he got involved. He's excellent. His name's Shaden. Yeah. And it was the first time in my life, or in any of these Bibles and Barbells, that I wasn't hosting it, I wasn't running it.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Some people didn't even know who I was. And I just sat back, and I participated. Of course, I told them the history of the Bibles and Barbells and everything like that. But it's really cool to be able to, give them the ability to disciple others and not just give them a fish type of deal. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
You're teaching them to fish.
100%. And switching back to Manhattan, Jim, where you run that Bibles and Barbells, what some people may not know if they haven't been there is that we have a really strong presence of soldiers. The soldiers, some of my best friends are soldiers. My regional manager has been in active duty for 17 years. He's supposed to have been out already, but another story. But so I have a passion for him. I have a lot of respect for him. And, you know, when these guys come back from being deployed, the worst thing they can do is go sit in a basement in a recliner in the dark thinking about all the bad stuff they've done.
Absolutely.
So
it'll overwhelm them.
It really will. So, like, I've had friends tell me, like, the gym has saved my life.
Yeah.
It's given them a physical outlet. And then if those guys get into Bibles and barbells, too, then they got their relational and their spiritual side nourished as well. So, and those are just the folks that tell me. Yes. And I know there's some that haven't. And I've probably had this comment from over a dozen people. And that's probably the most fulfilling thing about owning these gyms is the support. And the relationships that wouldn't happen outside of that gym. It's definitely, you know, before I opened the very first gym, my friend Caesar, he lives far away now, but we prayed on the dirt before we opened. I mean, because I opened the first gym in Manhattan in 2015, and it started construction in 14. And I was at that time really trying to come into my faith or working on my faith. And God's been in it ever since. And you know, I have a handful of businesses. And everything's clipping along really well right now, but there were some that I started that wasn't necessarily a God focus. I'm not saying that it was a bad business. I wasn't, you know, running liquor stores or bars or, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
But they didn't work. And the gym is one thing that I've had a ton of struggle. I mean, the first 2 years I barely made money. There's been a few years where things went south and I had to carry it. But God always provided, and I do not know how, honestly, looking back, especially the first year. So I know that he's in it. I know that this is my path for a reason. And it's a duty, but it's also an honor and a blessing to be able to do this for people.
Right.
I mean, not to say that everybody can't make an impact in certain ways, but, you know, we're not selling them insurance. We're giving them a place for a healthy outlet. They can become more confident. They can develop relationships. And when they're ready, they can learn about Christ, and they can come to Christ and save themselves for their eternity. So the Bibles and barbells, we've been doing that since, officially, what was it, like 17?
Yeah, I'd say, because it's been quite a few years. I've lost count of how many years now. And it was crazy. Is something I didn't tell you. It was about 2 years ago. Probably a year and a half ago, I got to the point where I was almost starting to get burned out on it because I was doing and giving a lot and investing in a lot of young people. And in Manhattan, we have the soldiers and we have the students. And so they were coming through and leaving. And I felt like I was having a Bible study for a parade as they were walking. And I was just getting wore out. And I'd had some really key people who I'd really invested in had to leave. And I was like, God, I don't know. And I just prayed about it. And I'm like, I felt real convicted. He's like, no, I'm not done. And that was right when it just like exploded. And I've been amazed right since I'm just so thankful that I didn't give in to just being tired for a second. Because we all do things that we need to do. It's like when I go to the gym. When I'm tired, I still go to the gym. I don't go when I feel good, or I won't go a lot of times.
Sure.
And then that creates a habit.
Sure.
And but giving to others and serving others. But I went ahead and I focused back in, and my wife will tell me, she'll tell you, I'm like, when we're going on vacation or something, I'm like, wait a second, when are we getting back? He's like, what? I say, I want to be back for Bible and Barbells because I love my group and their family. And that's when it really was really cool. But, you know, for me, something that I wanted to hit on is, you know, the church does not have a reputation for being physically fit. And you think of church and you think of pot bellies and potlucks. And they kind of go hand in hand. And it's like when you say, oh, he's not like a normal pastor. Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of guys who they eat a lot. And we take care of the inside, but then we don't take care of the outside. And then you can have the opposite. You can go into a gym and you have people who are in great physical shape, but emotionally and spiritually, they're empty. And that's where I love that we're able to try and kind of marry the two. And it's something I've tried to do in a preacher sense, set an example is, hey, take care of the body. Don't worship the body, but take care of the body.
Sure.
And then at the same time, take care of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are tuning in and listening, I know you got a lot of guys and gals who are extremely fit physically. But I'd really want to ask you guys, how are you doing with your soul? Because, I mean, you can be in the greatest shape physically and be empty as all get out. And you'll never get physically fit enough that you're going to feel good when you don't have the soul taken care of. Mm-hmm. And so I love the fact that that's something I've seen in you. It's something I try and do in my life. That's what I try and give to the guys when they come in and the gals, is just to say, hey, let's deal with your soul, and I encourage you to take care of your body.
Sure.
And both.
Yeah, well, and, the people in the gym that are able to be that disciplined, if you can be disciplined in that element of your life,
that's right.
You can be disciplined in your faith, you can be disciplined in your other relationships, in your daily job, Yeah. So they're probably going to be some of the strongest warriors for Christ.
Absolutely.
If you can bring them to it. And I think, and I know a common misconception is, I'm too broken or I am too messy to even come. I got to get it together first. Yeah. And that's not the case.
Oh, that drives me crazy, man. Because they're like, I'm working on some stuff and then I'm going to come. I'm like, well, that's stupid. I mean, that's like when you're out of shape saying, well, I'm going to get in shape so I can go to the gym. Mm-hmm. Who would ever do that? You go to the gym to get in shape. Right. And you get a trainer potentially to help you. Well, I don't know how to lift. We'll get a trainer. You come to the gym. And the same thing with faith is the church is not a museum for the saints. Oh, go in the church, see all the plastic saints. No. The church is a hospital for people who are hurt and broken. They've been through their stuff. They've turned it over to God, and they're far from perfect still. But they're at the point where when you get to church, you're saying, hey, I need help from the healer, from the only one who is perfect, which is Jesus, and I'm willing to reach out and help the next person. And so it's a place, it's like no one walks into a hospital and goes, man, why are these sick people here? What kind of a hospital? This is supposed to be a place of healing. Well, that's why they're there, is they need help. And the same thing with coming into the Bible and Barbells, whether it's going into your local church. If it's a church worth anything, they're going to welcome you mess and all. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't welcome with mess, then the gospel's meaningless. The very basis of the gospel is that we're broken people, sinful, in need of a Savior, and that's everyone. I mean, I'm honored that you have let me be there in your life. You've asked for advice. You've always spoke so kind to me, and it's meant a lot. But you know me as well. I'm not perfect. I'm far from it.
Right.
I know you. I've seen you in your ups and downs. You're a good man. I trust you. I trust your heart, your integrity, your character. But I also know you're broken.
Sure.
Because we all are. And you wouldn't need Jesus otherwise.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you get baptized or when you do accept Christ even, that's not like, hey, job's done. Honestly, that's when the work starts, right?
Yeah.
So you're held to a higher standard when because before you come to Christ, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so, but once you know how to live, the way to live your life. Granted, there's going to be peaks and valleys. Like sometimes I feel like, man, I'm being a great disciple, and then other times I'm like, gosh, I'm not focusing on my faith enough.
Right.
So that's just natural, and that's just going to happen. It's just got to be something that you continuously put effort towards. So the point is you don't have to wait till things are perfected.
Yeah. I've been following Christ for 40 years, literally. That means I'm really old. And I'm in my 50s now, and I gave my life when I was 10 years old. And I remember when I gave my heart, I prayed with my dad, gave my life to Christ, was baptized about a week later. And I remember as I went down in the water and came back up, that was the beginning of when I knew the Holy Spirit came upon me, his presence. It was just like he was like, I'm proud of you. And I felt that. I sensed that. But I have been growing for 40 years as well, and I'm far from where I want to be. But I'm every year giving a little more, figuring out a little more.
Sure.
And it's just like in the gym. You just continue to be disciplined. You continue to go, and it's not something that's a once and done.
Right.
I think a lot of people with their faith are looking for a one and done. They're like, oh, I said a prayer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, where in the Bible does it says, okay, now kick up your feet and take it easy? It's all about trials and tribulations, character building, right? What would you say to the people that are almost at odds with God because why would you let this happen to me? Yeah. You hear that a lot. Like, if God was present, why that wouldn't have happened? What would you say in that situation?
For me, I'm like, where is it that, who told you that he said it was going to be easy? Hey, it's like people come in and what do they say to the trainer? Like, this hurts. I don't want to, what are you trying to kill me? And we're like, no, we're trying to get you in shape. And when you lift weights, you're going to sweat, you're going to hurt, you're going to get sore. That's a part of, pain is a part of growth. And we know that. And when you go to school, it's painful. It's hard. You got to do a lot of work. Everything worth anything involves some pain in it.
Right.
And life is no different when it comes to faith. God, we tend to want a grandpa. We don't want a dad. Mm-hmm. We want grandpa who gives us Skittles every time we see him, never disciplines us, gives us whatever we want. Oh, you want more cake? I'll give you cake. Grandpas are great at bribing. And dad's like, no, that's going to make you sick. No, you don't need that. You need some healthy stuff. And he sets boundaries because dads love you. They both love you, but dads have to live with you. And God's with us as a dad who is never abusive, but he is enough that he disciplines and he cares for us and he watches over us. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is the Bible is very clear. Jesus himself said, in this world you will have trouble. That's as clear as it gets. And so when people say, I can't believe I'm going through trouble, I can't believe I'm going through this bad thing, as if Jesus lied to them. I'm like, no, Jesus told us very clear, in this world you'll have trouble. Over and over and over, that's in the Bible. And so this is just preparation for eternity. Yeah, this life is not all that there is. It's this much, Matt, of a line that goes on for eternity. Think of that, a line that is infinitely long, and we're complaining about this. It's kind of like when your kid, it says, and I've been here, and I've done this, and I've gotten mad at God. I've screamed at him. I've yelled at him about things when it hurt in my life. But he's been faithful and just continued to never give up on me. And so when people complain, it's kind of like when you're in middle school. I don't know if you ever went home to your parents and went, you're ruining my life, Mom and Dad, because they said no to something. You're killing me. My life is over because, a girl said no to you or something like that. And we're no different as adults. We're still throwing tantrums. We're still doing the same thing. And we don't realize we're just like a grown-up middle schooler doing the exact same thing. And he's like, calm down. This isn't your life. This is the preparation for your life. And so everything I do here, he wants us to have fun. He blesses us. He cares for us. He gives us so much freedom. We're not robots. If you want to demand everything to be good in this life, you're actually saying, God, I want to be a robot. Because that's the only way it would work. Because if he gives free will, that means he gives free will to you to do something that might hurt me, and he gives free will to do something that might hurt you. And I want my free will, but I don't want anybody else to have free will. Well, it doesn't work that way. We're robots, or we're given free will. And so in this world, there is going to be a time when Dad says, enough. It's kind of like if your dad was watching you play basketball or something, and it was just a hack fest, and they weren't calling any fouls, and the coaches were letting them get away with dirty plays. There might be a time where your dad just all of a sudden comes out of the stands and goes like, no more. And he'd have the right. He's your dad. He could stop that and say, you're done. Well, I kind of see that like this world. God's watching the game of life, if you might say, and he sees the hurt. He sees the pain. He sees the brokenness. He's a God who walks in and leans into that pain. He doesn't lean back. He leans in. And there's a day when he will say, enough, we're done. And that's when he takes us to heaven. And that's when there's no more pain, no more suffering, no more sickness, no more war. And we're going to be with him for eternity. And that's life. And I'm trying to prepare for that. And I don't want to take as many people with me as I can.
Yeah, and I can relate to that a lot because I'm kind of a control guy.
Yeah.
I like to handle things, and submitting was the hardest thing for me. But I want to make a point of, we've been talking about the hardship, and it's not all doom and gloom.
No. It's wonderful.
I've had a lot of things happen in my life where it's just like pure bliss and joy, seeing things come together, people coming into my life that I know that there's divine purpose to it. And the feeling we get when we're helping other people, it's second to none. And if we're switching back to a business side of things, I'm more successful now than I've ever been in my entire life. And I've been tithing for about 4 years officially, other than just dropping a little in the plate.
Right.
But I've been tithing at a minimum 10% of my income. Every single year, my tithe is doubled.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get excited to tithe. Initially, it's kind of like, but then now it's like, why? This is the best investment ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And things just keep doubling, if not more.
Yeah.
So I want people to think it's not all hardship.
No.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
A lot of time. It's because you get to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing better than when you get to help somebody and you see them come to joy in life. That's
Right.
so awesome.
Right. And when you do find your divine purpose and you do
Yes.
submit, God's going to give you the resources so you can do that more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I think get out of your own way, quit trying to control everything. Handle your demons, address them.
Yeah.
And the sooner you find out who you are and you start leaning into your purpose, then you're going to have a more fulfilled life at a minimum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the way I feel about things for me right now. Granted, I've had a lot of struggles, relationships, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change any of it for the world. I wouldn't go back in time, and there's no glory days that I want to go relive.
No.
I love life right now, and
That's right.
It's beautiful, and I got to say that's 100% because of God and because of my faith.
Yes.
And I look forward to tomorrow. I start my day with Christ. I end my day. It's important. It's the true root of why things have worked in my life, for sure.
Absolutely. For me, same thing. I mean, the last thing I wanted to be was a preacher. That's the crazy thing. I grew up, my dad was a wonderful example. He was a godly man. He was a pastor in little churches across the Midwest. But I'd seen some of the backside, and I had judged the whole by a few. Because if you judge the gym by a few, there's a few jerks in every gym.
Sure.
And you go, I wouldn't want to go there. There's a jerk there. Well, yeah, there's a jerk everywhere. And there's some jerks in the church. But I wanted nothing to do with anything to do with church. And it was God really worked me over. And I finally submitted and said, okay, I'm going to be a pastor. The last thing I ever wanted to be. I was like, God, really? But I've been doing this for decades now, and there's nothing I would rather do. I am so honored to be able to preach, to be able to share the truth, to be able to come down in the gym and deal with people from all kinds of churches that come into our gym Bible studies, and then to see life change. I mean, my life is so much better because of God. I really thought when I said yes to God and to preaching, I'm like, oh man, there goes all the joy and fun of my life, but yet I found all the joy. When he says, I come that you might have life and life to the full, that's what we're talking. Now, he says, in this world, you'll have trouble. It's like sooner or later, I'm getting older, you're getting older. I have to be careful now. I got a shoulder I'm kind of dealing with, actually, probably because of that day that I went heavy. But I'm glad that the body wears out. And that's a hard thing to say because it's something I also fight.
Sure.
Because the body does wear out. If the body got stronger and I got healthier and I got faster and I got smarter and I got just always better, where would I ever turn to God?
Yeah.
My life is good, and it's been so much better because of God. I would not be married today for over 30 years to my wife if it wasn't for God. There's no way. I love her. But I was selfish and stupid, and we fought like crazy when we first got together, and it was because we laid our life down for God that we learned to lay our life down for each other. And that's just true. There's a lot of good in life, and I enjoy it. One of my favorite posts or comments on your social media ever happened was somehow, I don't remember if it was you or one of the other guys, posted something about me when I was in the gym working out. I just happened to be in the picture or whatever. And there was a sub-comment that one of you, it was either you or one of the guys sent to me that said, hey, you ought to see this. And it was just some gal. I never met her. I haven't met her since. And she says, oh, I've seen that guy in the gym. He's always laughing and helping people. I just think he's one of the neatest guys. And I'm like, that's a reputation I hope I have.
Sure.
Because, in other words, I'm not the doom and gloom pastor. I'm straighten your life out. I love to have a good time, and I crack up, and I have a lot of fun, and I'm not a real quiet guy, but I'm really thankful for that, and I love it about you. I see a lot of joy in your life as well.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. Well, One other thing before we closed out, what I'd like to ask you, is there a scripture or a passage that you would come to mind that you'd want to share? Like, it really hits home?
Absolutely. And actually, it'd be my life verse, and it's just a tattoo I have right on my arm, Isaiah 41:13. And this was from one of the most difficult times in my life. I had kind of lost everything. My mom had passed. My health was gone. I was in a wheelchair, actually. I had mono so bad I couldn't walk. A lot of things, just thing after thing after thing had gone wrong. And I had gone to school because I promised my mom I'd go to a Bible college. She was about ready to die, and she's like, Barry, will you do your dying mom? She laid it on thick. She's like, will you do your dying mom a favor? I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking like go get pickles or ice cream or something. and she's like, go to Bible college for 1 year. I was talking to like 15 different schools about football scholarships at this point. So, I mean, that was where a lot of my identity was. And I did not like that idea. So I went ahead and went to school, but then she died that year. Everything went wrong you could possibly be wrong. But I saw the church for the first time for what it could be. And I saw people coming alongside. And I'd had this Bible my dad had given me when I went. And I opened it up as I said, God, I got to hear from you. And there's been like 2 times in my life that I've really sensed the audible sense of God showing up, not just speaking through his word or through somebody else or an experience. But I opened up the Bible. I'd been in it for a whole year. And there was a 3x5 card that said, memorize Isaiah 41:13. It was my dad's handwriting, and I hadn't seen my dad in a few months at this point, so he didn't get to sneak it in that day. I asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, that's my handwriting. I don't remember when, I don't know, Barry. And he couldn't remember. So for me, it was a miracle that God either placed the card there in that moment, or he hid it from me for a whole year until I needed it. And the thing that's beautiful about it is this is what it says. It says, for I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. And so it was like he spoke into the room. And I don't know what people are going through out there. Some of you are probably at the top of your game and everything is just awesome. Others, you feel like you're at the bottom of the cesspool barrel right now. But I promise you, in the good or in the bad, he also says to you, I'm the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I'll help you. You got to accept that. You got to reach out, because I was fighting him like crazy at this point. And so that's my story that has changed my life, and I hope that it'll help somebody out there who's struggling.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, too. And I would like to encourage people that are on the top of their game and killing it, and the people at the bottom that are struggling, pursue Christ at both points.
Absolutely.
Don't just come to him when things are bad. I mean, that works.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But if you want to really pursue Christ and be a true disciple, you got to be with him at all stages of life, right?
That's the truth with any relationship. You know, it's like you and I consider you a friend, not just a guy in the church. You're a friend. And that's why I like, oh, you're back in town, let's grab lunch. And that's why I drove to Kansas City today. It's because you're a friend. But we are a friend because we've shared good and bad.
Right.
And a lot of people just want to share the one side. And we've laughed together. We've lifted weights together, and I usually hurt really bad afterwards because I'm lifting with you. And then, but we've also, and we've had some rough times. We've talked out, and we've walked some of those valleys as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what God wants to do with us, like any good friend would.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you.
For real. Would you mind praying us out as closing?
Absolutely. Let's pray. God, I just thank you so very much. I thank you for your love for Matt, for me. I thank you for putting up with 2 stubborn, hard-headed guys and drawing us to yourself. I thank you for using us. And Lord, I know there are a lot of other people out there that are just struggling, maybe feeling forgotten, or maybe they're just hard-headed like we were, or their pride's gotten a hold of them. And God, they need you. And so, Lord, I just ask right now that you would speak into their heart, that you would somehow use Matt's story or my story to give them hope. And that, Lord, they just reach out, because they're designed to do life with you. They're designed to do life with others. And so many people are alone. God, please just pull them out, pick them up, hold them to yourself, give them some hope. And would they turn their life over to you, help them to find others to have training partners. and just to be able to move forward. And I'm so thankful for this thing called the church, and I just pray you help them wherever they are, wherever they're tuning in through, that they'd find a local Bible and barbells, or they'd find a local church family and just let somebody love them and let somebody be the hands and feet to them, because you're good. And Lord, we need you. It's in the name above all names, the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys. So we're going to wrap up. I hope you guys found this beneficial. You'll be watching some of my other podcasts potentially, and we talk about things that have been important in my life. So if any of you guys look to me and think, well, maybe he's got some things going on that I'd like to have, you need to know that the faith and our relationship with Christ is the number one element to what is going on in my life and in Barry's. So, I'm all about bodybuilding. I'm all about business. But at the end of the day, it all begins and ends with our faith. So, yeah. Barry, thank you, Brad.